Hello, welcome to Grumpy Meowster Consulting. Today, I'm going to tackle a topic that is close to me because I have almost 14 years now experience in IT, and I've been closely working with topics like service desks, with knowledge bases, with self-service, all of the stuff that is connected to support. I have been consultant, I have doing implementations of various software that are touching these topics, and of course, all of this goes into areas like project management as well. What I would like to talk today about is knowledge base as a process and why it rarely works in various organizations. In my experience, the more public the organization is, for example, government sectors, etc., the worst is the ability to make anything to work properly, and things like knowledge base is already falling short on that regard. And there are various reasons why a knowledge base as is usually fails regardless of what tools you're using. But before we tackle all of these topics, let's talk about what knowledge base is. Maybe you don't heard this term, maybe you think it's overrated, maybe you don't understand why it's important to have one of these in your organization. But knowledge base as it is something that has been following mankind since whenever we started to be able to write, essentially. Like the tablets, you could argue that first libraries, even the clay tablets, were like the first pieces of knowledge base, essentially. And what it is a library, but it is a little bit more than that. Knowledge base, as we know it, especially in IT, is a process. It's not just a library filled with information. But we could argue that the term library is basically what is a core foundation of knowledge base as it is. Okay, so what is knowledge base? Why is it process and why is it important? Now, if you have an organization and you need to spread information across this organization, then the knowledge base is a great tool to do so. But for knowledge base to work, you need to have certain processes in place to make sure that all your quote-unquote books, if you consider your knowledge base to be a library, are up to date and filled with relevant information. Now, there are various approaches how you can do this. Some people think that it is very important to let just anybody create knowledge, and that goes from, for example, end users and your customers, and even to like the basic employees, like for example janitors, to be able to write knowledge on any kind of topic. But what is important and what is crucial is then to refine these topics and throw out the clutter and really keep only relevant information, and then make sure that this information will get to the relevant people. This is what we call knowledge-based process. It's a very bare bones explanation, but it is sufficient to understand, or to have at least bare understanding, what knowledge base is and why it is important. Because any company, any organization, any sort of like group of people that are trying to work together to achieve certain goal, the information is always a key. So if you have knowledge-based process in this, then you basically setting up yourself for higher success rate, right? Because you do have information that you need. So knowledge base as a process, the core foundation of this process is what we call knowledge base lifecycle. So let's talk about that for a second. If you ask ChatGPT what knowledge base lifecycle is, if you Google yourself what knowledge base lifecycle is, if you, for example, are fluent in IT infrastructure library, all of these things will give you a similar result. It is a cycle that consists from whenever the knowledge base document is born up to when such knowledge base document should be retired, right? So what I mean by this life cycle, I'm going to show some images in the video later, but basically every document will start with the creation. As I mentioned, some people prefer if the creation of such document is, for example, made only by experts. The other approach would be let anybody create such document. So a couple of examples, right? If I will go into, let's say, expert documents only, meaning that we only have experts that are their full-time job or part of their full-time job is to just create really detailed documents and publishing them to inform everybody. That's fine. That's one way to create it. These documents will probably be more refined, but also there will be only on several topics that maybe are crucial, and this is a good approach for certain situations. For example, if you are educating your whole company on policies of like cybersecurity, that's probably a good idea to have experts to write such documents instead of letting anybody pitch in their 2 cents. On the other hand, if you have knowledge base that is broader and is touching all of the topics in your organization, then maybe you need broader approach and you need the broader collection of knowledge documents that are being collected and put in your organization, so you can allow everybody to do this. You can do this by multiple ways. For example, one of the common ways that is being pushed, and I think it works especially with IT infrastructure libraries solutions, is when you basically allow your support team, whenever they successfully resolve any sort of support issue, to create a document, if such document doesn't exist already, by various templates that you have in motion in your customer support or employee support process already. So you resolve a ticket, and this resolution has been so great that it is a valid reason to make knowledge document for every other similar situations like this. And there is like a even broader approach. You let anybody to just be member and contribute to your knowledge base. But the more broader your audience that is basically submitting documents into your knowledge base is, the more broad you need to work with other aspects of this life cycle. So the second and a very crucial part is to review and approve such documents. Now, whenever you write a document, regardless if you are an expert or if you are just an employee who does this because they think this might be of some value to somebody else, rarely you make a great document and great information value on the first try, right? I'm not saying that these documents are invalid. There is valuable info in them, but they need to be reshaped. And sometimes if, for example, a local receptionist mistook your knowledge base tool for a personal blog, then maybe you need to weed those things out, right? Because they are not valid at all. I'm not saying that ever happened, but that might have, So you need to review and approve these documents. And to do so, there are a couple of processes, and we do have various tools on the market, right? Every project management tool, every service desk management or self-service management tool, they usually come up with some sort of knowledge base included. There are even tools that are solely meant for knowledge base, but some people just make their knowledge bases in Excel, and all of these approaches are valid, right? You are having tools to help you build something. You are not using tools just because they are tools. And make no mistake, no matter how sophisticated your tool is, no matter how expensive your tool is, if you are not going to put in the work, your knowledge base will suck in the end. And we will talk why. This is the whole point of the video. But before we get to this, I need to briefly describe, well, I'm going maybe into more detail than I wanted to, but let's keep describing this process. So you need to review such documents, meaning, is there a valid info in such document? Is this document like poorly written, or does it have a good structure? Do I have some sort of templates that I can apply? I'm going to go over through all of these things. Depending on how complicated these documents are, I can even have multiple steps and multiple review approaches. Sometimes it's just one eye principle, sometimes it's 4 eyes principles. There is a lot of these that you can apply. The goal is to take basically a draft of the document and refine it into a document that is of value to people that need this document and need information in this document, right? Once you're sure it is in a state that when people read this, it will give them value and ideally answer to the question they might have, or inform them about some sort of process that they need to follow. It might be manual, it might be instructions, it might be just information how to work around over certain bug that is being worked on all of these things. Then you have a document that you can publish. Now the publishing document, meaning you are putting this into your library, and this should be accessible to all of the people that this document is valid from. If there is some info that has some non-disclosure on it, then you can use various tools to make sure that this document will get only into hands of people who have rights to access this. If this is, for example, manual how to use something, for example, you are selling a product, and we see this, I don't know, if any of you is a gamer, for example, and you are using your GPU, right, your graphic cards, you go to NVIDIA, for example, not non-sponsored, by the way, but if they wanted to, right, I'm up here. So you go to the graphic card website, and there is a lot of things. There is maybe like current versions of drivers. There may be a manual on how to use it. All of this can be considered knowledge base, because it is, right? All of these informations that are accessible from general public, from your website publicly, is in its essence, in its core, a knowledge base. So this needed to be reviewed, right? This needed to be put out there. And if you have knowledge base process in place, then these documents will probably be good, will be informative, and will not have any clutter in it, right? This is not personal blog. This is something that needs to inform people and give them bare bones information, and not much more over that, because people are seeking information. They are not seeking stories. Like this is not fun reading. This is informative reading. So once you have these documents, you publish them. Now the tricky part, where usually a lot of organizations fall short if it comes to knowledge bases, and that is maintenance. Hello, this is Grumpy Meowster Consulting from the future. After reviewing a video of my knowledge base and why it sometimes fails concept, I realized I did miss one huge thing that is often also a huge problem in companies. So let's talk about this right now in this slight intermezzo. So the one thing that knowledge base as a concept often fails to deliver, or why it is delivering with a huge, and I mean huge lack of efficiency, is basically not having it as unified methodology over your whole company, meaning there is no proper knowledge base tools in place, and or there is no methodology of how to do your documents. Now, of course, if you have any sort of knowledge management tool in your possession, you can streamline this process, but what is crucial in here is methodology. Now, let's say that you have a company that contains a huge amount of know-how across multiple branches or multiple departments in your company. Let's say you need to have sales guys capable of selling the product in a certain way. You have consulting guys who need to know how to implement and consult your products to your customers. You may have your support team is trying to support both your customers and your internal employees on how to work on their day-to-day business and day-to-day basis of operations. You might have management that needs to track certain things, and all of those informations need to be passed throughout your company. Now, if you have this unified under certain methodology, maybe you have some sort of templates how to store and create knowledge documents. Maybe you were using, for example, Microsoft SharePoint as information for videos. All of these things are valid. The problem is when every department, for example, has completely different standard for these, because you don't have any methodology in place, which translates into huge chaos, especially in between departments, if there is some sort of communication. And if you do not have methodology at all, then it is basically Wild West, where everybody is passing the information anyway it is suited for them at the moment. And while it might seem to be beneficial for employees to do what they want, in the long term, what you find out is you do not know, for example, how many duplicate informations you have stored, what kind of information flow you can expect, what kind of information is not covered, etc. And I'm not saying you need knowledge base or knowledge management tool to have all of this, but what you need to do is to have set up some sort of methodology For example, you can completely leave out the knowledge base tool as it is, but you need to have methodology in place that says, listen guys, whenever there is some sort of new policy in our organization, whenever there is some sort of new knowledge that everybody needs to know, or whenever there is some sort of new knowledge that each department needs to know, we are going to create a document, a set of instructions of how to do this, this sort of buffer of know-how, and we will put it on one central storage point that is our knowledge base, that is our library. That way we know where we can access this information, and that way we know if some information, and it might even be crucial information, is missing. Maybe this crucial information is being passed from worker to worker on word of mouth, right? Even if our employees are very competent at this point and the informations are not being lost on the process, which is unlikely, because when you have 3 people retelling the story of the person that has been telling them this story, you will have 3 different stories, right? So this is where mistakes are being literally made. Whenever you have this sort of process, this methodology in place, you will completely bypass all of these possible mistakes. So this is one huge reason why knowledge base can also fail, because the management fails to see the value in the knowledge base because it is not something that can be immediately seen. It is not something that will give you numbers right away, but it is something that keep your organization going in the long term. Everybody needs to know what they need to do, what is expected for them, what are the correct processes across all of the departments. So that's why you should have one unified methodology that can slightly differ based on needs of every department, but the core of it needs to be firm set of instructions, firm methodology that will tell you how to create and preserve your know-how. Okay, let's get back to the video. Now, you need to maintain your documents for several reasons. So the first reason is, do we still need this? Every document should have expiration date. Whenever this expiration date is nearing its end, there is difficult decision to be made. You need to analyze the document and decide one of the 3 core things. Is this document still valid? If yes, we need to review it in case some information changed and keep it up. If it is invalid, we need to define why it is invalid. Like, did it become obsolete because the bug got fixed, so we no longer need the workaround around this bug? If so, we can retire this document. It was a documentation of some sort of process that had to be placed because there was a temporary solution outside. For example, maybe some sort of government issued like temporary, I don't know, vaccines, for example, on COVID, whatever, but it is no longer needed, then we can retire it. Now, if you are retiring the document, then you have 2 choices what to do. You can either purge the document completely, meaning this document is obsolete, we probably won't need it again, we can safely delete this, or we can archive it. Now, archive documents have its meaning. It means that you will put this document somewhere into like quote-unquote safe. We are putting our book into the safe or into the basement because nobody is going to read it. It's no longer relevant, but maybe like 5, 10, 20 years from now, we will need to research back on our solution. So it is just better to keep it hidden, because there are still some valuable information there that are not going to be used on daily basis, but there is maybe something that we would need it for. So we either archive or retire such document. And that's it. Whenever we are keeping document, then the whole cycle repeats. If we archived or retired document, then basically the document ended its life cycle. And that's basically about it. Now, why did my screen just turn black? Okay. Now, this has been knowledge base lifecycle. Maybe I went into a little bit more details, but I still think it is a little bit short, right? It's just a bare bones explanation. Now, after all this has been said, we might come to a conclusion why such thing was a little bit complicated. And since this is as complex as it is, we need to look into details and analyze a little bit from a perspective of companies. So what have we learned? We've learned what the knowledge base document is, what knowledge base is a little bit, and what are the processes that need to be kept. And as I said, knowledge base is a process, but it's not just the process on its own. It is a process that goes throughout the whole processes in your organization. So, the support needs probably some knowledge base support behind it. Your IT department, even your other workers. If you are having manuals for your customers, you probably need to some sort of knowledge base process behind that. Basically, anyone who needs information should be able to go into your knowledge base and take that information from there. So the knowledge base needs to be snappy, it needs to distribute right information to the right people, and it needs to be keep up to date. Now, maybe now you can already see why this rarely works in lots and lots of organizations. And that is because, in my experience, a lot of times, a lot of people, a lot of managers, they think, listen, I will just buy this super expensive tool for my knowledge base and it will do all the work for me. What they fail to realize is it doesn't work like this, buddy. It will not work like this, because knowledge base is not just something you are doing on the side. It is a very important process, and if you fail to understand that, then probably just don't buy expensive things because they won't help you. What you need to do is you need to have right people assigned to this, and the bigger your organization is, the more people should probably be on this team as knowledge-based managers. Those are people who are making sure that documents are up to date, that knowledge base is being maintained properly, and they also need to select various people that are fluent in the topics of whatever the knowledge documents are talking about. So, for example, if you are a knowledge-based manager, but you know next to nothing about programming languages, right? You're not a developer. You probably need some sort of, the people, I call them garants, because they are guaranteeing that the knowledge base documents are factually correct. So you need to dedicate people and resources to this. And this is, well, it fails because I've seen many times that, like, managers, CEOs, these sort of guys just underestimate the knowledge base, do not like assign correct people to those, do not pay attention to the fact that knowledge base shouldn't be only created but also maintained properly. And I've often seen this responsibility for knowledge base being dumped onto people who have their own work, oftentimes like IT administrators, maybe some of the developers, or sometimes, God forbid, it's like people who just doing it because they want to share information, and they are doing it for free even. And short-sighted opinion might be, well, yeah, this is great. The long-term opinion is all of these people, whenever the time comes where they're overloaded by work, or maybe they quit, maybe they retire, then your knowledge base is in shambles, right? You might have knowledge base filled with documentation, with various information, with topics, with documents that are valid for a year, 2, but what about 5 years from now? Right? Nobody has been maintaining the knowledge base properly. And no matter how expensive your knowledge base tool is, it will not do the work for you. Even in this day and age, even in this day of AI, you still need a human factor. You still need people who go in there, who look into your knowledge base documents and say, yeah, the AI like updated this, but it's like complete slop. We need to rework this document. We need to rewrite it. He's like talking out of his arse. You can use AI, for example, to make the document structure, to make it look better, to improve your writing. But the know-how, the AI won't do know-how for you. And before the AI, it was even worse, because like nobody was touching some of these documents for years, and they were still public. So this is the worst case scenario, because new employee comes in, they're under impression that information is in the knowledge base. They go into a knowledge base, learn information that is no longer valid, and then you have chaos in the company, right? And I don't get how the managers still overseeing this, like how they are still neglecting this, but they do, because they are unwilling to put resources, they are unwilling to put budget into this. They are unwilling to create new work positions and rather dump it onto people who have already a lot of them their tables, right? So this is why knowledge base very, very often fails. And when knowledge base fails, it will cost your company. It will create more work, it will create more chaos, a lot of mistakes will be made, and then have fun explaining this to the board, for example. Now, we see in a lot of like huge conglomerates, like huge corporations, that they have indeed the whole team dedicated to knowledge base. And these people then are able to distribute the knowledge. When there is a new document that should be read by everybody, they notify everybody, and they're basically maintaining the knowledge, they keeping everything up to date. This is when it works, and this is when it works as intended. So if you are thinking about building your own knowledge base, do not rely, or do not try to find like the best tool for your knowledge base, because in the end of the day, if you are a small company, your knowledge base can be entirely like written in one Excel sheet that contains links to various documents. You just need to be sure that all of these documents are up to date. Now, if you have budget to spare to buy any sort of knowledge base or knowledge management tool that will help you keeping these documents up to date and distributed more efficiently, then for sure, go for it. But remember, before you invest into a tool, always invest into your people first. And it would be much more beneficial for you to just hire a knowledge manager on the first place before you even buy any of these tools, thinking that these tools will solve these things for you, because they won't. Now, what I'm trying to say here is, do not throw your money onto a problem to expect a solution to the problem. You might encounter a lot of sales guys that will try to pitch you their solution, be it the add-on or a customization to the product you already own and maybe bought from them or their company, or maybe you are trying to find a solo knowledge management tool, and some sales guy will present to you all of the advantages of their software and try to sell this expensive solution to you. But maybe before you buy such expensive solution, maybe consider your needs first. In ideal situation, you would have already knowledge management team in place, and this team would then consider if such tool would be of value to your company or not, rather than going in blind, buying a tool, and then try to adjust your organization to the tool, rather than using the tool to be helpful to you. Let's get back to the video. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about this video. Now, if you have any questions, comments are right there down here. I will try to answer to everything. If you want a consultation, contact me. We can figure something out. I love doing what I do, as simple as this, and I figured that I might also share it. And also, I haven't found too many VTubers that are doing knowledge base and IT stuff like this. So hey, hole in the market, right? Thanks for watching. This has been knowledge base as a process and why it rarely works. Sorry for the clickbait. It works a lot of times, but you need to have a right approach and you need to be able to dedicate people to this. And I will see you in one of the next videos.